Imagine stepping onto a football field, but before the coin toss even happens, a single sheet of paper has already mathematically predetermined your exact chance of survival.
Yeah, it's a terrifying thought.
Right. You look across the grass, and instead of just seeing the opposing team, you see, like, the raw, brutal probability of your own defeat. I mean, that is the reality of AFT Dice.
It really is. It just completely strips away all the romantic illusions of sports, you know?
Absolutely.
You don't have momentum, you don't have weather conditions, and you definitely don't have lucky bounces. You just have statistical profiles, variance, and the cold, hard mechanics of the dice.
And if you are looking at these numbers at home, you know that the data we are staring at today is perhaps the most brutally honest snapshot we have seen all season.
Without a doubt.
We have a single source for this deep dive. It's a highly specific, incredibly data-rich preview of the upcoming fixtures for AFT Dice Season 12, Round 15.
Scheduled for Sunday,
Yeah.
26th April 2026.
Exactly. And by Round 15, all that noise from the early season, it's gone.
Yeah, the dust is completely settled. What we are seeing in this data sheet specifically in what they call the picture format is just the hardened reality of where everyone stands.
Right. And for those who need a quick refresher on the underlying mechanics of AFT Dice, that picture format is a specific 4-digit statistical profile assigned to every single team.
Right, and it dictates exactly how your dice rolls behave on the board. The first number is your primary attack.
Which literally adds to your offensive dice rolls.
Exactly. Then the second number is your defensive modifier, what you use to subtract from incoming attacks. The third is your midfield control, like your structural safety net that dictates possession.
And that fourth number, well, we are going to get to that mysterious fourth number a bit later because that is a whole thing.
Oh, yeah, it really is.
But look, whether you are a seasoned AFT dice strategist who has been, tracking these probabilities since round one, or you just love deciphering complex statistical patterns, our mission today is to meticulously break down these newly released preview numbers.
And hopefully give you a massive edge in understanding this landscape.
Okay. Let's unpack this because, looking at the board, we really have to start with the extremes.
You do. The mathematical architecture of this round practically demands it. When you look at the distribution of these numbers, you just immediately see massive disparities.
Yeah.
And the most glaring statistical mismatches on the entire board are happening at the exact same venue.
Marvel Stadium. We absolutely need to talk about Marvel Stadium because, honestly, the numbers here are staggering.
They're hard to believe, honestly.
Right. Let's look at the Western Bulldogs going up against Port Adelaide. The Bulldogs are walking into this matchup with a picture stat line of 18, 4, 10, 0.
Yeah.
Now, let's just pause on that first number, 18. Nobody else on the entire board even touches an 18.
No, it's completely off the charts.
Yeah.
And Port Adelaide, on the other hand, is sitting at 7, 8, 6, 0.
So the gap between an 18 and a 7 in that primary offensive column, it isn't just a gap. It's a chasm that fundamentally alters the physics of the game.
It really does. To understand how devastating that is, you just have to look at how the stats interact with the dice.
Right, the base mechanics.
Exactly. If the Bulldogs have an 18 base attack and they roll a standard 6-sided die, their lowest possible offensive output on any given turn, their absolute floor is a 19.
Wow. A 19 floor.
Yeah, and Port Adelaide's primary attack is a 7, so even if Port rolls a perfect 6, their maximum ceiling is a 13.
A 13 ceiling versus a 19 floor.
The math physically prevents Port Adelaide from winning a straight shootout. It's just not possible.
Going up against an 18 is like playing a video game where you're just a level 1 character and you walk into the final boss room.
Right, or like playing poker where your opponent gets to deal themselves an extra ace every single hand.
Exactly. You can still mathematically stay at the table, but the variance is so heavily weighted against your survival that it feels hopeless.
It does.
But then, right after that, the very same stadium, you have Essendon playing St. Kilda. And we see almost the exact same structural pattern repeat itself.
Yeah, St. Kilda boasts its dominant 17, 4, 10, 0.
While Essendon is struggling with a 3, 9, 5, 0. What is happening here?
What you are witnessing is elite build optimization. When you analyze these top-tier teams, like the Bulldogs with their 18 and St. Kilda with their 17, there is an absolute inverse correlation with their second number, their defense.
Oh, I see. So teams with these overwhelming first numbers universally have extremely low second numbers.
Exactly. In both of these cases, that defensive stat drops all the way down to a 4. Meanwhile, their weaker opponents, Port Adelaide and Essendon, have defensive numbers of 8 and 9 respectively.
So they intentionally stripped away their defensive shell to maximize the spear. They traded structural balance for, like, overwhelming offensive velocity.
That's a great way to put it, yeah.
But knowing that, let me push back a bit here. If the first number represents strength and the second represents weakness, does a gap this massive mean the result at Marvel Stadium is just a foregone conclusion? Because if that second number represents a clear vulnerability, a defense of only 4, doesn't that mean Port or Essendon could just bypass the massive attack and exploit that weak defense? Do those third numbers, the 10 versus the 6, offer a glimmer of hope?
I wouldn't say it slams the door shut, but it puts a heavy deadbolt on it.
A deadbolt. Okay, explain that.
So that third column, the 10, is where the structural integrity of the elite teams really shows. That third number governs midfield control and possession.
Right.
So if Port Adelaide wants to exploit the Bulldogs' low defense of 4, they first have to win the midfield battle just to launch an attack.
Oh, right, because you need the ball to attack.
Exactly. But the Bulldogs have a 10 there, while Port only has a 6. So Port literally cannot get the ball enough times to exploit the weakness.
Wow.
The elite teams have built a foundational safety net that protects their singular vulnerability.
Which means Port Adelaide and Essendon have to play a mathematically perfect strategy to even stay in the game. I mean, one bad roll of the dice and the Avalanche buries them.
Yeah, pretty much.
Those Marvel Stadium games feel like executions rather than contests, but, that is not the case everywhere.
No, thankfully.
As we move away from those guaranteed blowouts, the mathematical gap starts narrowing, and honestly, that is where the tension really ratchets up.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, there's a massive logistical anomaly we need to address before we even look at the middle-tier numbers.
What's that?
Marvel Stadium is hosting 3 entirely separate matches in this single round.
Wait, 3 matches at one venue in a single round?
Yeah.
That is unheard of.
It is unprecedented physical and statistical traffic. We just discussed the Bulldogs and St. Kilda games, but there is a third game happening there. North Melbourne versus Fremantle.
Right.
Marvel Stadium is a fast, controlled environment that inherently amplifies high-variance play. Concentrating 6 teams and 3 full statistical clashes at this single location makes it the absolute epicenter of round 15.
The model is essentially stress testing these precise statistical alignments in a highly volatile setting.
Exactly. It's fascinating.
It really is Grand Central Station for AFT Dice this week. And that third game at Marvel is the perfect bridge into the middle of the pack melee.
It is.
So North Melbourne comes in with a picture of 10-7-7-0, and Fremantle is sitting at 13-6-8-0.
Yeah, and if we move up to the GABA for a completely different stadium environment, we see the Brisbane Lions at 9-7-7-0, taking on the Geelong Cats at 16-5-9-0.
The variance is shrinking drastically here. You don't have those 18 floors and 13 ceilings anymore.
Exactly. Look closely at that North Melbourne and Fremantle game. The numbers are incredibly tight.
Very tight. It is 10 versus 13 in the attack column, 7 versus 6 in defense, 7 versus 8 in midfield control.
Nobody has an 18 to lean on, and nobody's dropping down to a 3. It is just remarkably balanced.
Yeah. And for you playing at home, you might look at these middle-tier games and think, well, they lack the fireworks of the top-tier blowouts.
Sure, at first glance.
But from a gameplay perspective, aren't these middle-tier matchups actually the most strategically complex games for players to navigate?
Oh, they are an absolute headache for players.
Yeah.
And it all comes down to resource allocation and risk management.
How so?
Well, when you have an 18 attack, your strategy writes itself, right? You just roll the dice and crush whatever's in front of you.
Yeah, you just hit the smash button.
Right. But when you are North Melbourne with a 10-7-7-0 against Fremantle's 13-6-8-0, there is no obvious lever to pull. Fremantle has a slight mathematical edge in the first and third columns, but North Melbourne has the edge in the second column.
So you cannot just hit the smash button and hope for the best.
Precisely. It forces the player to constantly adapt and read the specific dice rolls round by round.
Right.
If North Melbourne rolls high in offense early, do they press their luck and push for a lead? Or do they fall back and rely on their 7 defense to weather Fremantle's counterattacks?
Oh, I see. Because they lack a massive structural supremacy, every single decision carries immense weight.
Exactly.
Yeah.
One poor choice in resource allocation is punished severely because there is no statistical safety net to bail them out.
Man, because those middle-tier games demand so much tactical flexibility, players must be desperate for any edge they can find.
Oh, they are?
Which brings us to the most coveted, misunderstood edge on the board. Here's where it gets really interesting.
Yeah.
As we are looking at these tight numbers across the middle of the pack, my eye just keeps getting drawn to the strangest statistical anomaly on this entire spreadsheet. The mystery of the fourth digit.
The situational modifier.
Right. In this four-number picture format, almost the entire league is putting up a 0 at the end.
It's crazy.
Out of 18 teams playing in round 15, 15 of them have a 0 as their fourth number. It is just a sea of zeros down that final column. Only 3 teams out of the entire league possess a non-zero fourth digit.
It is a remarkable scarcity, especially this late in the season.
It really is. So we have Collingwood playing Richmond at the MCG. Collingwood's line is 8-7-6-1. We have the GWS Giants playing Carlton at Giants Stadium. The Giants are sitting at 14-5-8-1. And then we have Hawthorn playing the Gold Coast Suns at Metricon Stadium. Hawthorn's line is 11-6-6-2.
What's fascinating here is Hawthorn's position. Having a 2 in that final column is entirely unique.
Yeah, nobody else has it.
It is the absolute highest number on the board for that specific statistic.
Yeah.
To understand the gravity of this, you just have to look at the broader timeline.
We are in round 15 of season 12.
Exactly. That is incredibly deep into the campaign. And yet 15 different organizations have completely failed to register a single point in this column.
Which implies that whatever this fourth digit represents, whether it is like a cumulative bonus from winning tight games earlier in the season, or maybe a situational modifier tied to specific tactical milestones.
Or even an unlocked strategic reserve, yeah.
Whatever it is exceptionally rare to accumulate.
Right.
And Hawthorn hasn't just unlocked it, they have doubled it. I mean, it functions almost like a secret weapon. If 15 teams haven't even found the key to the vault by late April, and Collingwood and GWS have just barely cracked the door open with their ones,
Yeah.
Hawthorn is walking around Metricon Stadium with this rare level 2 modifier that nobody else on the board possesses.
That was wild.
The Gold Coast Suns are sitting there with a 5-8-6-0, looking at Hawthorn's 11-6-6-2, knowing they have absolutely no mathematical counter to that final digit.
It fundamentally alters the geometry of the matchup. Look at Hawthorn's primary numbers. An 11 attack, a 6 defense, and a 6 midfield.
Those are pretty average.
Very average compared to the elite tier. But that 2 at the end creates an asymmetrical threat. It represents a variable that Gold Coast's mathematical structure simply isn't equipped to defend against.
So when you introduce a modifier that only one side possesses, standard probability calculations just begin to break down.
They absolutely do.
I love how this one tiny digit can just completely rewrite a game's narrative.
It's the beauty of the system.
But we have to come back down to earth for a second. We have looked at the massive mathematical final bosses. We have looked at the tight tactical chess matches in the middle pack, and we have looked at the rare modifier anomalies.
Now we have to look at the other extreme.
Yes. We have to address the teams that are severely lacking in their primary numbers, getting crushed in the midfield, and have absolutely no special fourth digit to save them.
The lower echelon of the data set. It is a stark contrast to what we saw at Marvel Stadium.
Oh, completely. Look at the West Coast Eagles. They're playing the Sydney Swans at Optus Stadium. Sydney is solidly middle tier with a 6-8-6-0.
Right.
But West Coast, their picture line is 1-10-4-0. A 1 in the first column.
It's bleak.
They have the absolute lowest primary attack digit on the entire board. Think about what we said earlier about ceilings and floors.
Yeah.
If West Coast has a base attack of 1 and they roll a perfect 6, their absolute maximum offensive output is a 7.
Right, and Sydney's baseline defense is an 8.
So West Coast could roll a perfect game and theoretically still deal 0 damage.
A 1 in that primary column completely negates the ability to dictate the tempo of the game.
Yeah.
They're entirely reliant on their opponent making unforced errors.
Just waiting for Sydney to mess up.
Exactly. But what is truly revealing about the mechanics of Season 12 is when you compare West Coast to the other struggling team at the bottom of the ladder.
Right, Richmond. Richmond is facing Collingwood, our secret weapon team, with the 1 at the end at the MCG. And Richmond's stat line is exactly 2-10-4-0.
Do you see the mathematical synthesis there? Look at the trailing structure of the bottom tier. Both teams with the absolute lowest first numbers, West Coast with a 1, Richmond with a 2, share the exact same structural deficiency across the rest of their board.
Wait, yeah. They both have a 10 as their second number.
Right.
They both have a 4 as their third number, and of course a 0 at the end. 1, 10, 4, 0, and 2, 10, 4, 0.
It is the exact inverse of the top tier.
We talked earlier about the elite top tier, the Bulldogs and St. Kilda having identical trailing numbers. They both had 4, 10, 0 after their massive opening digits.
Yes.
And now the bottom tier, West Coast and Richmond, have perfectly matching trailing stats too. They both have 10, 4, 0.
Yep.
So let me ask you this. Does this mean AFT Dice Season 12 has mathematically stratified into rigid, unchangeable tiers by round 15?
That cuts right to the core of Season 12's design architecture.
Because if the top and the bottom have mathematically locked themselves into identical structural templates, it feels like the season is less about gameplay and more about a rigid caste system.
Well, by round 15, the law of large numbers has taken over. The variance has been squeezed out of the extremes.
Okay.
The elite tier optimized their builds to maximize primary attack power, settling into that 4-10-0 trailing pattern. But the bottom tier didn't choose their structure. They were mathematically forced into it.
Forced into it how?
They had to max out their defensive modifier to a 10 just to survive the early rounds, leaving them with absolutely no resources to build their primary attack.
Wow.
So they are trapped in a defensive posture, essentially turtling up with a 10 defense and a 4 midfield, just waiting to lose slowly rather than quickly.
Oh, that is brutal.
So yes, the data clearly proves that AFT Dice has stratified. The top and bottom tiers are locked in by their own optimization choices. The only true tactical fluidity left in the season exists in that middle pack we discussed earlier.
Which makes our next and final matchup so incredibly compelling.
Absolutely.
Because we are moving from the tragic stratification at the bottom of the ladder to what I believe is the single highest stakes elite showdown of round 15.
Yeah, this is the big one.
This is the match where elite primary numbers clash head-on with that rare fourth-digit modifier we were talking about.
You are referring to the GWS Giants versus Carlton at Giants Stadium.
I am. If you are listening to this and you only track one dice roll on Sunday, 26 April, this is the statistical heavyweight fight you need to watch.
Definitely.
Let's look at the tail of the tape. The GWS Giants are walking in with a 14-5-8-1. Carlton is sitting at 12-7-7-0.
This raises an important question regarding statistical valuation in AFT Dice.
Much is.
How much is a slight numerical advantage worth when it is compounded across multiple columns?
Right, because Carlton is an incredibly elite team. I mean, they have a double-digit primary attack with a 12.
Yes.
They have very solid, balanced secondary and tertiary stats with a 7 defense and a 7 midfield control. They are structurally sound. They don't have the glaring defensive vulnerability of a 4 like the Bulldogs do.
But GWS just slightly outclasses them almost everywhere. The Giants have a 14 attack to Carlton's 12. They have an 8 midfield to Carlton's 7.
True, but Carlton does have a 7 defense compared to GWS's 5.
Right, Carlton has that slight defensive edge.
But then you factor in the venue context, GWS is playing at Giants Stadium.
Yeah, the home ground.
Exactly. They have the home ground advantage, which historically influences dice variance favorably in AFT mechanics. And crucially, they are one of only 3 teams in the league to hold a 1 in that final mysterious column, while Carlton has a 0.
When you synthesize all of those compounding factors, you realize the immense mathematical pressure Carlton is under.
Yeah.
GWS has the primary attack advantage, meaning their scoring floor is higher. They have the tertiary midfield advantage, meaning they control possession. They have the home ground.
And they possess the rare 4th-digit modifier.
Exactly, which injects an asymmetrical threat into the simulation. For a highly rated Carlton squad, this is the ultimate stress test.
It really is. It will mathematically prove whether a fundamentally sound, perfectly balanced build, which Carlton has achieved with their 12-7-7-0, can withstand an opponent that has min-maxed slight advantages in almost every single category.
It is a masterpiece of a matchup.
It really is. I mean, it is the kind of game that AFT Dice strategists will be dissecting for seasons to come. Because if Carlton wins that, if they manage to roll effectively enough to mitigate all of those slight disadvantages, it completely upends our understanding of how powerful that 4th digit actually is.
It would prove that solid, balanced fundamentals can override specialized, compounded modifiers.
Round 15 of AFT Dice Season 12 is just serving up an incredible spectrum of data.
It really is.
We've got monumental numerical mismatches at Marvel Stadium, with the Bulldogs and St. Kilda flexing their massive primary numbers to crush the variance out of the game.
Yeah.
We've got incredibly tight, highly tactical chess matches in the middle of the pack where every single dice roll demands a strategic pivot.
Right.
We've got a rigid, almost tragic stratification at the bottom of the ladder with West Coast and Richmond hurtling up for survival. And we have these cryptic statistical anomalies at Metricon and Giants Stadium, where that elusive fourth digit threatens to rewrite the rules of engagement.
The underlying architecture of the entire season is fully exposed in this preview. The numbers simply do not hide anything once you know how to read the structure.
So what does this all mean? For you, the listener, possessing this preview data gives you a unique structural map of the league heading into Sunday's games.
Absolutely.
You aren't just guessing who will win, you're looking at the foundational math that will dictate the flow of every single dice roll. You know exactly why Port Adelaide is statistically suffocated before the game even begins.
Yep.
You know how the tactical bottlenecks in the midfield work. You know exactly what to watch for.
You have the complete blueprint. The chaos of the dice will always have its say, but you now understand the underlying probabilities that govern that chaos.
But I want to leave you with a final puzzle to ponder, something that flips everything we just discussed completely upside down.
Oh, I like this.
We have spent this entire deep dive operating on the assumption that having a number in that final fourth column like Collingwood, GWS, and especially Hawthorn with their 2 is a positive thing.
Right. We assumed it's a secret weapon, a tactical bonus.
Exactly. But think about this mathematically. With the season advancing all the way to round 15, does the fact that 15 different teams still have a 0 in their final column mean they are missing out on a crucial mechanic of AFT Dice?
Oh.
Or is it possible that this elusive final number is actually a penalty?
Oh, wow.
Right. What if it's a cumulative fatigue weight or a structural handicap that Collingwood, GWS, and Hawthorn have accidentally triggered and will now have to mathematically drag with them into the rest of Season 12?
That would change everything.
Keep an eye on the dice on Sunday. The answer might just reveal itself.